Breaking news this Monday night. A deadly shooting rampage at a 4th of July parade.
Oh my God, it's gunshot!
America's Independence Day marred by a mass tragedy.
We started shooting again, and we ran behind the building.
Allegations of children in despair and group homes in disrepair.
Nobody cares about them.
The claims kids were called paychecks. Global News investigates. Seizing control, Russia's new victory in Ukraine. And home wrecking.
What shall I do now? Will I be left out on the sidewalk?
Opposition to the impending demolition of Egypt's historic houseboats.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news. A 4th of July parade in a Chicago suburb has become the scene of the latest mass shooting in the U.S. A gunman on a rooftop opened fire on parade goers, killing at least 6 people. Dozens of others are in hospital. Tonight, Robert E. Cremo III is in police custody. He was arrested after a brief pursuit. Right now, he's being called a person of interest, not a suspect. Mike Armstrong now on how a parade quickly turned into panic.
It was a scene that changed in seconds. From a fun day for families out for a parade to moments some witnesses are calling simply chaos. Everyone from young children to seniors running to safety, running away from gunfire.
I thought that it was the Navy that was saluting the flag.
When the shooting was over, this man hid his son in a dumpster and returned to the scene to look for the rest of his family.
It was just horrible. I went back, there was a few people shot on the ground, and there was a little boy that was in one of the police officers' arms, and that was the worst experience ever.
According to the coroner, 5 people were killed at the scene, a 6th died in hospital. All were adults. The wounded were taken to hospital, dozens. Other people at the scene were told to shelter in place and wait for police to escort them away. Now, the gunman disappeared as police approached. Perched on a rooftop, he stopped shooting and escaped. He left behind a high-powered rifle recovered by police.
I was very terrified. I hid with my daughter, actually. And
police are speaking to witnesses and asking the public for any surveillance video that may contain clues. They're also going through social media in case the shooter posted anything online.
I've been here 15 years. Every year I'm surprised that it took this long.
This man says his reaction to the mass shooting, once he stopped running, wasn't surprised. There are too many shootings in the U.S. for that, he says. He just thought, today, it was us. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
For a year, Global News, in partnership with APTN, has been investigating the state of the child welfare system in Ontario. Tonight, we zero in on one of the biggest names in privately run foster care and group homes, Connor Homes. The company, by design, makes money off kids in care. But it's the type of care these children receive that caught our attention. Allegations of kids going hungry, being mistreated, and homes falling apart, all while the owners built another company on the side, luxury vacation rentals for the rich. Carolyn Jarvis reports.
On its website, Windswept offers vacation properties, including waterfront retreats, inns, even a private island it says you can fly your float plane to. The properties are owned by the Connor family, the patriarch, Bob Connor. Stay here and experience all the comforts of home, the website boasts. But this was home without comfort for some of the kids living at the Connors' other properties. Houses run by their other company, Connor Homes, which operated for-profit foster care and group homes for 46 years, and which still runs 3 group homes in Eastern Ontario.
These homes were in horrible shape. Electricity not working, water not working. That happened on a regular basis.
Former workers who asked that their identities be concealed for fear of reprisal say before the ceiling collapsed in one of the homes, they repeatedly documented water damage in daily logs. But disrepair, they say, was often left for weeks, even months.
What message does that send to the youth when it's not worth fixing up their home?
That nobody cares about them, and that's exactly what the youth would say.
There are no parents here. In group homes, kids and teens live together with rotating staff.
A lot of people don't know what happens They need to see what's going on.
Ontario's Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services had an idea of what was going on. Inspectors visited between 2019 and 2021 and interviewed a girl who said her mattress was so uncomfortable she had to pile several old blankets under her sheets. Inspectors also spoke with a boy who lost his glasses at his last foster home, but says he was told by Connor Home staff that he was not allowed to have a new eye exam until December, 9 months later. They noted bed linens were dirty and smelled of body odor, and there were mouse droppings in kitchen drawers. And yet, the province renewed Connor's group home licenses.
This is happening and there's nothing being done about it.
Connor Homes, which declined an interview, said it strives to exceed the legislated minimum regulatory standards, adding its foster care license was renewed by the ministry without any conditions for the first 40 years. The ministry, meanwhile, says it's increasing oversight and reviewing the processes for inspections.
These kids in these homes weren't a priority.
For every child in its group homes, Connor Homes receives a per diem payment using public funds. As we uncovered, $198 to $213 a day.
Some staff would say that they're a paycheck.
What do you mean, a staff would call a youth a paycheck?
Yeah, I've heard multiple staff say that to kids straight to their face.
In its foster care division, money was also a motivator. Connor Homes would hire supervisors to recruit foster parents and open new homes, paying them $10 a day for every child placed in a home.
Every young person in care has a price tag. We're talking about companies doing business through kids as commodities.
Today, the Connor family has amassed a real estate portfolio owned personally and through their companies, worth over $10 million, according to Global News' calculations. Meanwhile, there were complaints to the province, as recently as 2020, that kids were going hungry. Carolyn Jarvis, Global News.
And we continue our investigation into Connor Homes tomorrow night when we hear firsthand from a young man who lived there and says those facilities are no place to raise a child. First Nations children and families harmed by chronic underfunding of the child welfare system will be officially compensated. The federal government says it has signed a $20 billion agreement, half of the money it plans to use to reform the system. The news comes as the Assembly of First Nations prepares for its annual meeting. It begins tomorrow in Vancouver under a cloud of uncertainty. Following allegations of bullying and harassment, the organization's national chief has now been removed from the agenda for opening day. Neetu Garcha reports.
Fix anything that needs to be fixed. It's a great opportunity.
Ralph Leon is among hundreds of chiefs, elders, youth and representatives from across the country meeting in Vancouver for what is expected to be a heated week at the Assembly of First Nations Annual General Assembly.
Nobody has that right to ban our national chief from her meeting.
The AFN reversed an earlier statement that National Chief RoseAnne Archibald would be barred from attending this week's meetings after Archibald made an urgent court appearance in Ontario last week to ensure she can legally attend. But the judge rejected her bid to overturn her suspension.
I stand behind the national chief and what she needs to do.
Cookpee or Chief Judy Wilson says Archibald is dealing with issues that have compounded over years relating to the AFN's governance foundation, policies and procedures.
There were issues that needed to be addressed then that we were told were addressed, but unfortunately they're not addressed because now they're escalated to the forefront of this AGA.
Wilson supports calls for a forensic audit spanning the last 8 years after Archibald alleged she was being persecuted for trying to investigate corruption within the Assembly.
I think as chiefs across Canada, we're just looking for the facts and information. I don't want to buy into the drama of he said, she said.
As they gathered for private meetings Monday, Archibald tweeted, "The regional chiefs continue to try and silence me. My call for transparency, accountability and truth. They have erased the national chief from the agenda. This is a chiefs in assembly meeting, not an AFN exec meeting. Hashtag forensic audit now."
If the national chief was forced out through some legal process, that will cause even more dissension and difficulty in the organization. So we will be watching the AFN meeting with more attention than we have in recent years.
We can't lose focus on why we're here.
especially amid a pivotal point in Canadian history with a reconciliation-focused papal visit to Canada just a few weeks away. Many here say now is a critical time to bridge these divides. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Ahead of his trip to Canada later this month, Pope Francis is addressing rumors about his health. In a rare interview, the head of the Catholic Church dropped some hints about his future at the Vatican and weighed in on world news. Eric Sorensen reports.
The Vatican rumor mill has been churning. The Pope looks frail. There are whispers of cancer. And an upcoming visit to the same city Pope Benedict went to before he resigned all led some to believe the Pope is preparing to step down. So Francis sat down for a long interview with Reuters to quell the gossip and get some things off his chest. First, there is no cancer. At least he says the doctors haven't told me. He described a leg fracture that has kept him from making a trip to Africa, but says he'll be ready to travel soon. I will do the trip to Canada, because the doctor told me with 20 more days you will recover. In fact, his visit here is now just 20 days away. It will begin with a gesture of reconciliation when he arrives in Edmonton. In April at the Vatican, the Pope apologized for the abuses committed by members of the Catholic Church against Indigenous children who were forced to attend residential schools. Demonstrating his vigor, he said he wants to follow that with trips to Russia and Ukraine. After I come back from Canada, I may go to Ukraine. And if Russia's president gives me a tiny window, he would go to Moscow to serve the cause of peace. The Pope also took up the controversial U.S. Supreme Court decision bringing new restrictions on abortions.
No justice, no peace.
Unlike many American protesters, Francis respects the decision and condemns abortion. Is it right, he asked, to take a human life to resolve a problem? It is a moral question, he said. And while Francis is not planning to resign soon, he did say he's prepared to do what Pope Benedict was the first to do in 1,000 years, to step down before he dies. For the moment, no, but the time will come when I see that I can't do it, and I will follow the great example of Benedict. And when might that be? We don't know, he says. God will say. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Nothing but luggage and lineups. Coming up, the never-ending nightmare at Canada's busiest airports. To the chaos at Canadian airports now, where travelers are fed up with last-minute flight cancellations, lengthy delays, and long lines during one of the busiest times on the calendar. Tonight, Abigail Beeman looks at the growing backlogs and what it could mean for your summer getaway.
No one seems to be immune from the lost luggage nightmare. The Arkells landed in Saskatoon, but their gear flew somewhere else, so they had to borrow for their Saturday concert. After learning a new song Friday in Surrey, BC, because their opening act's band's flight was cancelled.
They canceled all my flights, just like that. I mean, I paid thousands.
The center of chaos, still Toronto's Pearson Airport.
I've been here since 8 o'clock last night. I haven't slept. I went to a hotel. The hotel tells me that the voucher Air Canada gave me doesn't work.
It's been a lot busier than I thought. We're just flying to Montreal and the line has been crazy.
It wasn't clearly online what we had to do when we arrived here. So they didn't accept our COVID certs on our app. We're Irish. So they wanted it all on paper form. So that was a bit of a hassle.
Lost luggage, delayed luggage, it's a problem in many places. This is the scene here in Ottawa. In this pile, I see car seats, mobility devices. There's a bag with a crew tag here right in front of me. Some people having to wait days to be reunited with their bags.
I think I had 3 or 4 cancellations and I slept overnight in Toronto at the airport.
Monica Lung arrived in Ottawa Wednesday. It was supposed to be Tuesday. She's now getting this bag 5 days later.
It's been annoying, but I mean, I don't blame Air Canada exactly. It's just all the airlines at the same time.
This aviation expert blames airlines, the government, and airports for a migraine-inducing situation he calls somewhat predictable.
A lot of people left the industry. Pilots retired, flight attendants went on to more lucrative jobs, less demanding jobs at least. And so they had a shortage of people on the airlines as well as at the airports.
Something most experts agree on, things aren't expected to improve during this busy season.
It will only get worse before it gets better because, summer has just started. We had our first long weekend of the summer. We have tons of pent-up demand.
And one perhaps obvious tip, if you don't absolutely need to check a bag, don't. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Sydney swamped. Ahead, the life-threatening emergency in Australia's largest city. Ukrainian soldiers have now pulled out of the strategic city of Lysychansk as Russian forces move one step closer to capturing the entire Donbas region. Russia is calling those territorial gains an important victory, but as Redmond Shannon reports, they represent a major come-down from Vladimir Putin's initial goals for the invasion.
Military protection in serene Lugano, Switzerland.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
For a conference focused on rebuilding Ukraine.
The Kremlin's goal is the military, political, and economic destruction of Ukraine.
Ukraine's Prime Minister says the full long-term recovery bill may be close to $1 trillion.
This support encouraged us for a faster win. It gave us hope to have peaceful times and reconstruct and recover my country.
Denis Shmihal wants countries to follow Canada's plan to use frozen Russian assets to pay for some of that. The funds may one day be used here, Luhansk region, now completely under Russian control after Ukrainian troops withdrew from the city of Lysychansk. The regional governor says his forces could have held out for 2 or 3 more weeks, but would have ended up dying for nothing. Luhansk is one of 2 regions that make up the Donbas in Ukraine's east. The other is Donetsk. Russian-backed forces have controlled parts of both since 2014, and Russia still only controls about half of Donetsk. Vladimir Putin described the advance as a liberation. But 4 months into the invasion, these are scaled-back victories compared to Russia's initial plans.
Every one of these big battles, Lysychansk, Severodonetsk, Mariupol, they are long, grinding battles, and the Russians are paying dearly for what they take.
Analysts believe the arrival of more advanced Western weapons could soon give Ukraine the upper hand as battles move into Donetsk. Ukraine recently received these US HIMARS rocket systems.
They need them in much higher numbers if it's going to make the kind of difference that Ukraine really needs for an outright military victory. And the Ukrainians have said as much.
Ukraine's other problem could be the manpower behind those weapons, as it reportedly deals with ongoing heavy losses on the battlefront. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
The bodies of 12 mariners have been recovered after a Chinese research vessel broke in 2 and sank during a powerful storm. The vessel, with its crew of 30, was moored at what was supposed to be a safe anchorage to wait out tropical storm Chaba. But the ship's anchor chain snapped and the vessel was pummeled by the storm. 4 of its crew were rescued, but hopes of finding anyone else alive are being described as very slim. At least 7 people are dead and at least another 13 missing in the Italian Alps after a large chunk of a glacier broke loose, causing a landslide. Video captured the avalanche, sending ice, snow and rock onto a trail popular with hikers and climbers. 8 people are in hospital and rescue crews continue to search for those unaccounted for. Italy has been experiencing an early summer heat wave, and decades of rising temperatures have caused the Marmolada Glacier to shrink. 30,000 people have been told to abandon their homes as life-threatening flash floods are rising around Australia's largest city. Dams are overflowing and 3 major rivers have burst their banks around Sydney's outer suburbs. The same area was hit by flooding in March, killing 20 people. Australia's emergency management minister says there's a good chance this one will be worse, with some areas having received more than 1.5 meters of rain in the last 24 hours. Hope floats. Next, why residents of Cairos' historic houseboats are praying for a miracle on the Nile. Egypt's sprawling capital, Cairo, is undergoing a major transformation. The Jewel of the Nile is one of the world's biggest tourist attractions and is trying to keep up with the rapid modernization of its neighbors, building shiny new high-rises, bridges and roads. But as Mike Drolet explains, as Cairo builds for the future, a part of the city's rich history is being discarded.
Progress isn't always pretty. At times, it can be downright cruel. Save for a brief period after getting married, Iklas Helmi has spent all of her 87 years living on the Nile in the heart of Cairo, Egypt. My entire life has been in a houseboat, she says. I was born in a houseboat. This is my entire life. I cannot leave it. But last month, the government declared the remaining houseboats moored on the Nile unsafe and unlicensed and ordered them demolished.
The River Nile, the shores are lined with thousands of houseboats.
There was a time when Cairo's houseboats hosted Egypt's political and cultural elite. Governments, it's been said, have been formed on these very boats. But over the years, their numbers dwindled, leaving only the 32 that are now being removed, despite some last-ditch attempts to save them.
We've been here for 10 years, this is our home, and we feel like we have no choice but to just stay where we are and see what happens.
What's happening is Cairo is in the midst of a transformation, as the government aims to modernize and monetize its most desirable addresses. Soon, this stretch of the Nile will be lined with floating cafes and restaurants, while this former resident looks for a new place to live. We collected our possessions, our stories, our history, our hearts, our memories, and our feelings, he says, and placed them into boxes. Will progress transform Cairo into a more modern city? Perhaps. But by cutting ties to its romantic history, Cairo will lose something as well. Mike Drolet, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Monday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is the Nicola Valley in Merritt, British Columbia. We love to see Your Canada. Please email yours to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night.